What do you think?
Sounds good. So Rick's mentioned, I worked for JB Aspen in cattle procurement about 4 years, started off in the feed yard. Before that, do all of our grids and formulas and a lot of our internal data analysis for cattle procurement. A little background about JBS, we've broken it into 3 different proteins. We have obviously beef, pork, and chicken. We also have 2 case-ready plants. Focusing on the beef side of it, we can kill up to 31,000 head a day, kind of our capacity, makes up about 22% of our market share. Over 36,000 team members just in the U.S. between all the plants and offices. Kind of narrowing it down, some more background on us. We have 9 beef plants across the country. The ones that I cover are these ones in the gray. So they're your four fed beef plants, kind of what you think of as your traditional feedlot animals. The other ones, they're what we call our regional plants, focus on Holsteins and cows and kind of more specialty programs, especially in Omaha. We've heard a lot kind of with Jason and Judd and Colt, there's a lot of programs out there. Everybody's wanting to know where their food comes from, and there needs to be something unique about the cattle coming in these days. We have programs that fit everything, whether it's a natural program or these Angus programs. We're looking at 1855 and certified Angus beef. Those are your traditional CAB programs. Chef's exclusive, it's kind of it's similar to CAB except there's not the hide color on it. So the grading still has to be there, upper 2/3 choice. Carcass size restrictions on it, and then it kind of goes down from there. So we have, again, programs that really fit everything for the customers, because that's what we're seeing. We're seeing customers, whether it's a retailer or food service, they're looking for something unique and also a consistent product, and that's what kind of getting into a program is going to deliver. And again, Aspen Ridge, that's one that we harvest out of Greeley. That's going to be our natural program. So some interesting points about the Aspen Ridge. 75% of the cattle can be traced back to the farm or ranch. It's breed specific, Angus by genetics. So compared to where certified Angus beef has to be, I think 75% black hided, and it's all based off of the phenotype or how they look when they come through the plant. These ones, it's based on the genetics, so they can be any color as long as they get traced back to being 51% Angus. And what I think is interesting and really fits in well with Charolais conferences, you can have a Angus Charolais cross that's really going to fit this program well because you're going to get the characteristics of your Charolais. It's going to be well-muscled animals, get good growth in them, but you're also going to stay away from the excess yield grade 4s and 5s and that extra fat that you're seeing. So they'll really work well kind of getting crossed with Angus cattle to fit some of these more breed-specific programs. And again, part of the Aspen Ridge is it's third-party audited, certified humane. We harvested in Greeley and all prime and choice. Now I'll kind of go through some trends on what we're seeing in data coming out of the cattle, whether it's weight or grade. And it's going to lead to the point of seasonality and where the Charolais cattle can fit into different timings of the markets throughout the year. So this is just cattle weights throughout the year. We're looking at steers, data released by the USDA every week. And we always see a dip kind of that end of spring, beginning of summer. We always see the lowest rank or the lowest weights then. A lot of it's calves coming out of feed yard, winters across, or everything making it out of the winter and calves coming out of feed yard. So we see a drop in weights. And then they begin to increase starting about now, and we'll top out again in the fall. I know Colt kind of had a slide talking about 1991 versus, 2017? and kind of the trends we're seeing. This is an interesting graph, and it's carcass weights over time. So going back to 1990, we'll see, granted you'll see a dip in the average carcass weight on a given year, but if you average, or if you look at it all the way through 2018, we're seeing a 1.2% increase per year on the average carcass weight coming in. And I don't think this trend is going to change. I mean, again, we might have a year or two where we'll see a drop in weights, whether feeding costs get too high or bad winters, but bigger cattle are coming. And we're, as a packer, we're looking forward to it. We're looking for an increase in carcass size. It's more pounds getting through the plant and beneficial for all of us. And again, I think your Charolais genetics really fit in well there, being able to put on that faster growth and a larger, or a large muscle carcass. This is a great, this chart's, again, going back to seasonality, it's showing the grading average percent of prime and choice combined. Again, this data is released by the USDA, so it's a national average. But I just took it back to 2014, being that blue line on the bottom, and then running it all the way through so far this year in 2019. We're seeing a little over a 10% increase between these 2 years. And if you take 2014 out of it, take it to 2015, you're seeing still almost 5–6% increase just over the past 5 years. And so what I think this is really showing to, or kind of pointing towards, is we're seeing an increase in grading in cattle genetics and improved production everywhere. So what used to be high grading cattle, or kind of beat a plant average or something, now it's kind of become your commodity. We're looking at 80% prime and choice on average between all across the country. So that's your normal now. I mean, that's what we're expecting to get into the plant, and looking to cattle producers to pick those top genetics that are going to support the feed yard and bring those cattle in. And we'll break it down to prime grading too. I mean, same kind of graph, similar trend. We're seeing an increase in total primes here, or just over the past 5–6 years. You know, where it used to be 5%, now we're at 9%. Some weeks it can get up to 10% across the national average. And I think this graph also really points out the seasonality behind grading. Kind of when you go to the graph, or when we think back to the graph that we showed with the weights, we see a drop come spring, early summer. We also kind of see it with the grading, and again, a distinct drop in the primes, but it starts to come, or it increases as your carcass weights increase as well. This graph is only going to go, or it's another testimony to the seasonality behind your grading. This is the average choice select spread, so the difference between what the choice meat's selling for and your select meat's selling for. And we see a peak this time of year, every year. So last year it got up to record highs of around 20–25 bucks. We're seeing an average, or the average, it's kind of trending to what's going on this year. But again, we see that seasonality in it. So this time of year, we're really looking for that top grading. You have a few reasons for that. A lot of consumer demand coming into the summer. Everybody wants to get out and grill steaks and enjoy a good steak. But we're also seeing a drop in the grading as well, which we saw through that prime grading graph and the choice grading graph. So your supply of good grading cattle kind of comes down this time of year. And I think, again, I know Charolais, they are well known for putting on a lot of muscle, building carcass, and keeping lean cattle, but we need to focus on grading. If you're trying to hit this market or this time of year, and the grading's not there, it's going to be harder for the packer to go to that feed yard and fight for those cattle. So, again, this just really points out this time of year, spring, summer, grading is a necessity, and we will be looking for those black cattle. There's hardly any yield grade 4s or 5s out there this time of year, so black cattle and high graders are what's the focus this time of year. But, again, the seasonality, so it's going to switch. This just shows the average of your yield grade 4s and 5s, so how much fat do they have over the back, and the cuttability of it. Again, we see a trend. So back this May, June time, that's when we saw the spike in the choice select spread. So not as much grading. But then you come into the fall, and you look at your yield grade 4s and 5s, and that's where they peak. That's where we're going to see the most, the highest percentage, or the most prime and choice cattle coming in. So we're not worried about going out and hunting for those primes or those CABs or kind of premium cattle. What we're needing to get through the plants then are lean cattle, and that's where the Charolais genetics are really going to excel. It's getting that lean carcass and also being able to still grade, but really focusing on reducing yield grade 4s and 5s. Has some future trends, advantages of your Charolais and Charolais cross cattle. I mean, its ability to provide the genetics and of lean, well-muscled cattle, reducing those yield grade 4s and 5s, but also getting that carcass size on there. Increase in premium programs over the years. That's something we're seeing coming down the pipeline. I mean, we all touched on it, but whether it's traceability, NHTC, or natural programs, consumers are wanting to know where their food comes from, what makes this steak unique. They would take more of an interest in it. So with that, we're seeing a lot more programs coming. And again, they provide a consistent and uniform product for the customer. And then natural programs. Again, I think the Charolais really will fit in well with our natural program, being that 51% Angus genetics, being able to cross the Charolais Angus will get a lot of that grading, but also will provide value to the feed yards because it'll keep the cattle leaned up and not as many yield grade 4s and 5s. And humane handling, producer transparency. I mean, we're working through BQA to have producer outreach, work with feed yards, and go over humane handling issues. I mean, Judd talked about it on vaccination. I mean, how many people leave vaccines at the wrong temperature, and that's something BQA goes over and kind of works with feed yards to increase awareness of humane handling, even though it might be issues that might just be as benign as keeping a vaccine at a wrong temperature. And that relates into producer transparency, so then we can say to the final consumer and the family going to the grocery store that we knew how these cattle were treated. We knew how they were raised, and we can testify to the wholesomeness of the beef that we're harvesting. Some industry challenges, I think we're all facing these. The biggest one is labor supply. I think that's the biggest restriction that we're seeing in the cattle market, and how many cattle can we process. You talk to a few people, and there's different thoughts on what the weekly capacity for harvest is, but I think based on plant capacity, but what's really going to restrict it is your labor supply. How many Saturdays can you run in the summer before your employees start getting tired or your quality starts going down? So that's kind of the biggest issue, is how do we keep our workforce engaged with work. Rising supply of competing meats. We see chicken and protein being able to produce quicker and a lot cheaper. You go to the grocery store and it's still chicken and pork are cheaper than beef. So how do we compete with that? World trade barriers. We all like to watch the news, look at Twitter lately. You never know what's going to be shot off over the internet, or what's going to be said. That's going to change how we trade and kind of where our meat goes. So whether it's trading with China and there's tariffs and embargoes going on, but that's one thing that we're always kind of keeping our eye out for, and we all should, is what markets are we going to be able to hit, and how are these trade barriers going to affect it. Animal disease. It doesn't take much for a sick animal will pop up and shut down a market for us. Fortunately, we haven't seen much of it in beef in our country lately, but it's something that's concerning. I mean, we see it in all the other proteins, whether it's pork and the African swine fever. So that's always a concern for us, an animal disease, and how is that going to affect the market and who we can sell to. And food safety or employee safety are really go hand in hand. We need to operate a safe plant and look out for the well-being of our employees, but also keep food safety in mind for delivering a quality product. And that goes back to, I think, you can tie that into traceability and humane handling, and what can we do to deliver the best product to our customers.